So before I get into this video, I just want to give a quick disclaimer that this is a review on DanMachi Volume 15 of the light novel. So of course I will be covering spoilers from Volume 15, which is beyond Season 3 of the anime itself. So if you don't want spoilers of what is beyond the anime itself, I would suggest clicking away, because I will be talking about stuff that is much further on than in Season 3. When talking about Volume 15 of DanMachi, this is definitely a very meaty volume, and there's a lot going on in this volume, but it isn't one big continuous story. It is sort of a collection of many different side stories, mostly to do with the past itself and giving context to backstory and components of different characters. And the ones that kind of really stood out to me particularly was the Wealth one, because Wealth was definitely one that I kind of was really bummed when Season 2 came out and they did not do the actual side story, which was to do with him and his family, and of course the magic swords and them sneaking into the city to try and get him out, and that fiasco. So I was kind of bummed about that. So it was kind of cool again to see some more backstory into him. There is also some other backstory stuff as well. You've got Hestia, you've got a lovely little fox girl, you've got our lovely elf girl as well in that bundle as well, and some of the backstory for her and why she thinks and feels the way she does, how she ended up getting mixed up in the situation that she was, just little bibs and bobs, and it is really nice. And one of the things I would love to see is actually if they ever did do an anime format, they'd actually construct it so it flowed, because some of the stuff here does connect with other stuff that happens in other volumes, and it's kind of a little bit of a hodgepodge of just different stories kind of all put into different chapters. And again, I really do like this volume, but seeing this in an anime format would never happen, just because I know well enough that they don't seem to want to put any side stories or backstories into the anime, and they only want to focus on the main core story, which is kind of disappointing, because some of these side stories are just really awesome and it adds so much more flavor to the characters as a whole. Particularly the first one that gets talked about is basically Bell, and how basically, you know, his grandfather dies, he ends up, you know, heading towards the city itself, and how he spends 6 days trying to look for a god or a goddess to join their familiar, and how he constantly kept getting rejected over and over and over and over again. And so it kind of really shows the struggles that he had in trying to find someone. And then of course Hestia actually ended up rocking up at the right time to ending up recruiting him. That it also goes into her backstory as well, as how she came down to the heavens and she kind of came a little bit late, which of course you had Freya and Loki already established their familiars. And it just seems to be, again, Hestia's kind of joined very late in the game when it comes to joining the mortals themselves. So I do kind of wonder what would have happened if she had joined a lot sooner and had a lot more time to establish herself. But at the same time, when you go into the backstory of her, she is a little bit lazy. She kind of just pots around and doesn't do anything, and that's why Hephaestus ends up booting her out, because she gets frustrated that Hestia isn't really doing anything for herself. And though of course that ends up putting Hestia in a bit of a bind, Hephaestus helps out a lot in little different ways. But I think Hephaestus is kind of, in the way I see, is almost like the mother to Hestia, you know, kind of scolding her, trying to direct her in the right direction, and trying to, you know, encourage her to be self-sufficient. And I think that's why Hephaestus is so proud of her in the story as time goes on, you know, where Hestia actually gets Belle, she wants to do something for Belle, and then of course her familiar numbers end up growing, which of course ends up being that she ends up taking over that mansion. I think Hephaestus is very proud of her, and that's why Hephaestus tries to do what she can to help Hestia, but at the same time not overly give too much to Hestia, because again, Hestia has a tendency to just kind of relax a little bit too much. But I think Hestia has definitely grown as a character a lot, and so has Belle. But one story that I really loved was Wells' story, and not just like his backstory going over, you know, the magic swords and how he was able to make them, how they tried to force him to make magic swords, and then how he ran away, but also his interaction with Hephaestus as well. The relationship between those two is really cute and heartwarming, and I really love the chemistry between them, because you can clearly tell there's going to be some romance down the line between them. And you can actually tell that Hephaestus wants something with Wealth, but Wealth is more determined to prove a point before he's willing to kind of like, I think, go down that route. It's going to be interesting to see how that romance goes. It's nice to actually see something that's not just focused on multitude of girls falling over Belle and seeing some other romance in other areas, so it is nice on that part. But going over Wealth's backstory, I really do feel sorry for him, because the person that helped him, which of course was a goddess, ended up getting sent back to the heavens, and that definitely really hurt him in many different ways. And then of course he's, you know, struggled to get by in the actual city itself as he moved there to try and, you know, do his blacksmithing. You can tell he definitely struggled to get along with people for a while. It's the same with Lily as well, because it goes over Lily's backstory and how Lily really doesn't get along with people for quite a while, and it really comes down to Belle being the catalyst that ends up bringing both of them out of their shells. And it just shows that, again, Belle being the silly idiot that he is, that he's just lovable. You know, you be around him, and over time, your cold heart, rock heart, melts bit by bit by bit, which allows, you know, characters like Lily and Wealth to become a lot more open, and their trust in Belle is extremely high. And that's what I really love about this volume, is it does give context to their character development and where they came from and where they're going. And beyond that, of course, in the next volumes beyond, where that possibly can go as well. It's definitely one of those volumes that I feel like, again, you need to read for. It's a fairly meaty volume. It's like 380 something plus pages, so it's definitely got a lot in it, and there's definitely a lot of stuff that I won't be covering that I might save for other videos, because there's just some really interesting things to kind of dissect out of this as a whole. There are only a couple of points that I really want to kind of talk about, which of course is Eyes, the receptionist, and then of course a lovely little bit of Elf Girl. When it comes to, of course, our Elf Girl with the previous volume, with volume 14 and volume 13 and everything that happened in the dungeon, it does dive into that a little bit in this volume as well, and the romance going on between her and Belle, and you can definitely see that obviously she has feelings for Belle, but at the same time, clearly Belle doesn't feel the same way. And I mean, he is pretty dense, and I mean, he is pretty head over heels for Eyes, so it does make me wonder if there's going to be anything that kind of transpires out of that romance. Again, I know a lot of people really do want to ship them together, but I do kind of feel like the author's kind of teasing us a little bit on this particular part of the romance, because again, Eyes is the end game. The author has said that, unless he decides to change his mind, which again, that is very possible. But I do feel like it's kind of that situation of, you know, with a multitude of different girls like Hestia and all of that are all in love with Belle. I do feel like it's just kind of like one of those, again, many girls being a harem are all in love with Belle, and Belle is very fixated and focused on one girl. And I do feel like it's going to be one of those heart-wrenching moments where Belle ends up rejecting her. I really don't want to see it, because I generally really do love that ship, but at the same time, I do really like the Eyes and the Belle ship as well, because it's been built up for such a long time. You become very emotionally invested in that ship. Again, I'm not the kind of person that's going to get all upset if, you know, a ship doesn't go in a certain way. I just like seeing the journey play out the way it does. And just as long as the story makes sense and the decisions make sense from Belle's end, and of course the other people deciding decisions within the story, and of course the author as a whole, then I don't really mind where the story goes depending on that ship. But again, I have mentioned in previous videos that part of me kind of just wants a harem ending, because I feel really bad for a lot of the other girls that have feelings for Belle and that are going to end up getting rejected and they're heartbroken, because my only concern is when it comes to rejections like that, they either go on the cheerleader squad or they just end up getting forgotten into oblivion. So that's the only concern I have about harem series. I still enjoy the overall story as a whole, so don't get me wrong, I'm not having a jab at it. I'm just saying, you know, depending on how things go, you're definitely going to see some moments where certain characters are going to get really heartbroken. And that also goes into my next point, which is, of course, the receptionist, another girl that has feelings for Belle as well. And it goes into the backstory of her and how she became a little bit detached from adventurers, because she became very attached to adventurers and trying to support them. And of course, she was an advisor to a particular adventurer that ended up dying, which ended up really hurting quite a lot. So she didn't want to get attached again to another adventurer, which of course was going to be Belle, which she ended up deciding to do because they all placed bets that Belle was going to die very, very quickly because of, again, how silly and stupid Bell can be at times. He's a little bit too happy-go-y, and I think sometimes he kind of throws himself into situations a little bit too quickly without rationalizing or thinking things through. But I think, honestly, he's got a very good streak of luck. I think that's one of his ultimate powers that he possesses, is that he just has a ridiculous amount of luck on his side, and it proves it with everything that's transpired in the last couple of volumes as well. It just seems to be, he gets thrown into one bad situation after another, and he seems to come out of it pretty much mostly unscathed. I mean, yeah, he had a couple of rough moments in the latest volume, and he definitely needed some R&R, and he's had some struggle sleeping, which is of course why our lovely Foxgirl also ended up helping him sleep as well. But it's definitely one of those where it's like he came out pretty well, all things considered. It could have gone much worse. But again, I know it's a light novel series, you know, main protagonist is going to have some plot armor, but at least the story does have some repercussions to the events that played out. You know, Belle mentally is struggling with everything that went on in that particular scene. So yeah. The last part that I do want to talk about is, of course, Belle and I. So I was building up to that, but the last part of the volume has really caught my attention, that Belle has finally started to work things out. And I mean, of course, from us, the readers and the anime fans, we all know a lot of the stuff when it comes to Aiza's backstory and who she's related to, and again, her family history and some of the issues that she has with monsters in the dungeon and all of those sort of strings that are all kind of attached to different moments. But Belle is now starting to piece certain things together, and I'm interested to see where that goes, because I think Belle is going to kind of have a bigger revelation, and I think it's going to shake the foundations between their relationship, and I think it's going to go in a very interesting direction that's going to end up bringing them closer and closer together. But I also think that they're going to end up working together on some bigger major enemies in the long term, which of course is the one-eyed black dragon, which was mentioned at the end of the volume where a kid asks her to defeat it. I think they're both going to work together to defeat the one-eyed black dragon, of course, with their familiar members. The thing is, though, of course, Loki and Hestia don't get along, which I feel like Freya's going to bring Loki and Hestia together, because I think they're going to both have a common enemy, and they're going to have to work together to deal with that problem later on in the actual light novel series, because it's obvious Freya has her eyes on Belle, and I'm not spoiling anything in the future, but just saying that it's obvious Freya has her eyes on Belle. She's going to do something. When that happens, well, you just have to read the light novels, but I think, again, something's going to happen. They're going to have to work together, and I think that is also where it's going to lead into the one-eyed black dragon situation, where they're going to end up defeating that together. Again, that's just my theories and analysis on it. I don't know if that's going to turn out the way it is. We'll just have to wait and see, but I think that's also a good way of building up the romance as well. So I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What did you think of Volume 15? I will be probably doing some more videos kind of dissecting little bits and pieces out of this. I've still got other videos planned for DanMachi. I've got the side story light novels. So again, don't stress, plenty more DanMachi content coming out until I've kind of talked about every single little situation. It's the same with Overlord. I've kind of relaxed on Overlord content, but I still want to do more in the future. It's just not overdoing it to the point where there's nothing left to talk about. So don't worry, I'll be slowly putting DanMachi videos out as time goes on, and if anything official comes out about Season 4, I will announce it on the channel. But again, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I will see you, beautiful nerds, in the next video.